trying to pull this into the public consciousness. In 50 years of knowing my father, he was at the landing of Salerno at the Second World War. He never, ever, ever mentioned one word to me. He never shared a single thought about what he'd seen and done in the war. That's the comment. Yeah. So I applaud you. The second question is, what was the genesis of you becoming involved in this as a subject? I mean, it's such an unusual subject to tackle, but what triggered your imagination, your curiosity?
Well, actually, the first thing I'd like to say is that your father, it was not uncommon. Men of the generation coming out of World War II and earlier, I mean, there was such a stigma against admitting any kind of emotional or mental weakness, and especially the World War II veterans were considered heroes, and they needed to act like heroes. And so they, so many people that I know who've had parents that were veterans from World War II had the same story, but of course they suffered terrible symptoms, drinking, you know, just everything kept inside. So I'm not surprised that you had that experience, although I'm sorry that for your sake that you weren't able to talk with them about it. I got involved because I had met Mary Lou in 2001 through a colleague of mine I teach at Quinnipiac University, and the woman who played the wife, who started having the argument at the very beginning, her name is Crystal Bryan, and she's the director of the drama program at Quinnipiac University. And in 2001, she staged Brecht's adaptation of Sophocles' Antigone, and I worked with her. I brought my video production students, because that's what I teach. She brought her drama students. We lit and videotaped interviews with veterans at the West Haven VA. Her students interviewed them, talking about their experiences of war. And the production that she staged then had clips of the veterans projected on screens at moments that were extensions of the Greek chorus, where these veterans would reflect on the nature of war and their experiences of war. And in going through that process, just listening to those stories, I began to learn so much just about war and what it does to people who serve and what the experience does, that I stayed in touch with Mary Lou, and she and I knew that there were just so many untold stories in the VA. That's what I realized. And so I kept thinking, you know, what is the story what's the thread that will allow me to go back and help bring the stories together? So 2 years later, 2003, and actually 2004, she contacted me and said, the drama group is working, mainly Vietnam veterans at that point in the drama group. She said these folks have, they didn't think the Iraq War would be going on like this. It's becoming the nightmare that they thought they'd never have to experience again, because for so many Vietnam veterans, the pain that they went through in the years after service, and you can correct me if you think I'm wrong, but they thought at least nobody will make the same mistake again. You know, they learned something from the mess of Vietnam, and at least people will never make this mistake again, and people won't have to suffer like that. And so with Iraq going on and turning into this quagmire, Vietnam veterans were finding their symptoms of PTSD were coming back, and they were having nightmares, and they wanted to reach out because, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think your feeling was that the new veterans coming back, they already knew. It was like the Cassandra complex. They knew what they were going to go through, and they wanted to say, you know, you're going to have a hard time, a lot of you, and you won't know what's happening, and you'll be miserable, but we want you to know that we've been through it, and we can help you, and we're here to help you. Is that correct to say what you?
Yes, ma'am.
And I don't think we want them to wait 35 or 40 years.
That's exactly. True. We don't want them. We don't want them to have to go through all that
I stopped
mess we
drinking
went
4
through.
or 5 years ago. Yeah. Okay. I was an alcoholic till then.
Yeah, it was.
Miserable
That
to
was
my family.
My family throwed me away, you know,
so
couldn't understand me.
You understand exactly what I'm talking about.
That's why I wanted to go back, because I fit right in over there. Yeah. You know, here's where I had the problem, trying to fit in out here.
Yeah. When 911 happened, I found out I was too old.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So just to summarize, that they were working on a play, and Mary Lou said, you know, if you'd like to come down, and I think this would be a great subject for a documentary. So I asked the group if they were interested in having me do this, and they all very, very courageously. I mean, the courage of this group to just put themselves out there and everything they were thinking and feeling in the process. I mean, it was such an honor and a privilege to be invited in to do it, but that's how it got started.
Just as a supplemental, did any of, I mean, question to your colleague, do any of you continue to do amateur dramatics outside the VA environment? In other words, have you extended your acting career?
Oh, no, sir. I just enjoyed that the VA,
But you know, Louis, you're wrong, because Crystal Bryan has actually, this is an interesting sequel to the film, because as you saw, she played the wife of a Vietnam veteran, and she played the daughter of a World War II veteran. Well, Crystal's father served in World War II. She had been estranged from him because he was abusive and an alcoholic. And she thought, you know, she and her brothers and sisters thought he just hated the family. And in fact, when he died, she never went to his funeral because they just weren't on speaking terms. She played this role, talked with George about his father, and she suddenly realized, oh my gosh, my dad probably had PTSD, you know, like your dad. And she at the same time happened to get some letters. She got all of his letters to his mother, and what else? He then got a letter to a friend who is still alive, who was a confidant, and in whom he had confided some of the experience, because he'd been in Iwo Jima. He was a medic. He wasn't even in combat, so he was a medic. And so she was just so completely upended by this realization of who her father actually was and why he'd been the way he was, that she then wrote a play with another veteran, and it was performed at Long Wharf Theater in New Haven, and Louis was a star in that play.
So the answer to the question is yes.
And you don't know where the future will take you with your
that's
acting.
true. It's been a blessing, Miss Becky, what I call everybody.
Yeah, he's just got the southern charm.
Yeah,
I mean,
you know, but
really go
it's been a blessing for Miss Becky. Maybe when she wanted to film us, we was like, oh, I want to hear our story. Somebody want to hear what we got to say, you know. And we was honored, and still is, you know. And it's changed my life at the VA. Miss Becky, Miss Mary Lou, all of them and all the other veterans I've met. It's my whole life's geared around the VA at West Haven, and I just enjoy it. I feel at home with the old guys. I just love them, you know. I walk up to the Marines looking for a few good men. Boy, I was doing that before you was born. Boy, that makes them feel good, you know. They just love it. I love making the old guys laugh, you know. I just love it, you know. That's the happiness I've found in my life now, you know.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
And then you had a
I guess I was just wondering if there was any thought about adapting this play therapy to family members who might have needs also.
Well, drama therapy is used in a lot of different contexts, and in fact, the film is going to be shown on Monday at a Expressive Therapies Summit Conference in New York City, and so it will be in a presentation next to a presentation on drama therapy and use for victims of abuse, child abuse. So yeah, I mean, drama therapists are applying these skills.
I was thinking specifically for family members who lost.
Oh, in terms of,
yes.
Well, Linda has joined the group. Frank, sadly, Frank Atria died this past summer, but he was the the guy who was building the shop and was just such a wonderful member of the group, and a partner of mine. And Linda is his wonderful sister, and so we brought her into the group, and so I don't know. What do you want to say? Do you want to say anything about that?
I saw my brother actually blossom into a whole other person. I don't think he was very self-confident at all. When he joined the group, he just became this other person. He came outside of himself, and he really, really blossomed. And I just don't know how to put it, but it did so much for him in terms of who he was, in his confidence, in being able to express himself, I read some of his poetry. I never saw my brother write a sentence. And when I read his poetry, I was absolutely floored and stunned at the emotions and feelings that came through on paper. And that had done that for him. I think it's an excellent thing. These guys are wonderful. These guys are wonderful. They've accepted me, and I'm pleased to be part of it. Pleased to be part of it.
Yes,
So, a question for Louis. When you meet with veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan, I guess two parts. What's it like for you to sort of be meeting with them who are just coming back now? And also, what kind of response do you get from them?
Well, I was on the elevator one day with a young guy, and when the old guy got on, and I said that, and when he got off, he said, "That's good what you just done." You know, the young guy said that to me, and I said, "Yeah, I feel good doing that." You know, he saw what I was doing, making the old guy laugh. You know, and he said, "That's good what you just done," and he appreciated it. You know, and whereas a lot of civilians may not, because it's a couple of guys they own T3. One guy served with Patton, you know, Marty, you know, and Bert. They was in World War. Both of them was in World War II, and I actually really respect those guys. They went through all this before I was born. You know, I was born right after the war. I was born in '45, so they went through all this in '41, 40s. Before I was born. That's what I just love making them old guys, that's what I call them, the old guys, make them laugh, you know, because I appreciate what they have done, you know, I really do.
We've had one or two Iraq War veterans come into our group. It's still early to have them joining the group. I think they're still...
Yes, ma'am, because a lot of them, they can't admit that they're having mental trouble, because they're subject to going back, you know, and they don't want to be pushed out, you know, so they don't have the freedom like we had. We got out, we was through, but they still subject to having to go back, so they can't admit that they are having mental trouble, you know, and I've heard that the suicide rate's pretty high among those guys, and we understand it because we went through it, you know. It's a sad thing. It really is. It's bad. You know, that once they get out here, they feel thrown away, you know.
We've had more than one or two, but the ones that we've had have had more serious medical problems, so they can't really stay in the group. But we've had a lot of Iraqi veterans. The group meets in a hospital every week on an extended care ward. So it's a lot of people that are in the hospital. It's something they can do on a Sunday. So a lot of Iraqi veterans just come to see what the group's about, but they've only stayed as long as they've been in the hospital.